For today, I'm going to be sharing with you guys my top 10 palettes that I plan on using a ton for the fall. These are also palettes that I know and love, and I just feel like it kind of gets me into that fall spirit. So instead of doing it the typical way, I figured I would just share with you guys going through my drawers. So let's get started. Okay, so the first palette that I want to definitely pull out in the next few days, since it's almost September, is my eyeshadow palette here by Ofra Cosmetics. This right here is actually called the Beyond Words palette. So this one right here is kind of like beat up and used to its T. So I'm just going to show you guys one that looks a little bit newer. So we released this palette back in March, and I don't know if it was necessarily the most perfect time to release, just because I feel like when I look at this, I definitely see more of like a fall/winter vibe. So, I mean, I've been using it here and there, but it really is getting me excited for the fall months. So on top here, you get 4 metallic shades, and then 4 like deeper matte shades. You can use these lighter, or you can also deepen them up. That's why I included 4 like deeper tones. So you have the option to go both ways. There's a blush, highlighter, and bronzer. I just feel like because it has like this gorgeous deep purple, the deep green, this is called Cleo because of my cat outside, this beautiful deep brown, and then like this berry color, I feel like it really is everything I want in a fall palette. You can do so much with this one. You can use these as like duos, you can use them as like trios, you can use them as quads, and I situated them in a way where it is easier for the eyes. And then of course with the face palettes, you can also use these on the eyes too. So there really is a bunch you can do with this one, and I'm just fully obsessed. So you'll definitely be seeing me wearing this a lot more than you have in the last little bit. I love. You could use my code Liora, L-I-O-R-A, on Ofra site to get 20% off this if you guys are interested. The next palette I definitely think I'm going to be pulling out in the next little bit is this palette right here by Melt Cosmetics. I'm actually not a massive fan of all of their palettes, but this right here is literally the epitome of fall. Throwing any of these shades in the crease and then deepening it up with these browns really creates like the perfect like fall look in a way where, like, you know, when like leaves fall and they change color, that's pretty much what this is. This is like a full September palette. The quality of this one is also really good. It does blend really well. They are very pigmented, but I find it's actually one of their easier palettes to work with compared to other palettes that they have. There aren't a lot of metallics, but there are a decent amount of mattes, and a lot of times in the fall too, I started doing this even like a little bit ago, but especially going into the fall months, I'm very into like a solid matte look. So I see myself moving into the fall months using especially this shade right over here, this one, and this one. And that's pretty much it, without actually including a metallic. I think that just looks soft, but it also kind of makes a statement, you know? So if you're looking for like rustic, warm tones with a pop of something extra, which I would say is that it really makes the palette, then this one right here is an absolute must. Okay, the next palette that I wanted to pull out is this one right over here by Too Faced. So there actually isn't a ton of palettes by Too Faced that I'm fully obsessed with at the moment, but the Natural Nudes palette I just think is fantastic. Besides for the fact that the quality is amazing, you get a nice selection of matte and metallics. You can kind of deepen things up with these shades here or keep it light with these tones. I just love the consistency of these. Really easy to use, really easy to work with, and so much fun to come up with different color combinations. And as much as these shades look maybe in the same family, a lot of the times they will look pretty different on the eye, which I love when a palette offers that. So this one right here is not necessarily overly warm. It's not overly cool either. I would just say it's perfectly in the middle there. It's a nice neutral palette that is very diverse. You can wear this on a day-to-day basis or even for like special events, special occasions. I think it's stunning. For me specifically, I'll probably use this on those days where I want to go for more of like a fall type of look, but I don't want to overdo it with like such obvious shades in a way. I would say like with like super warm tones, you know, or like rustic tones. I feel like this kind of keeps it on the down low, but also makes you feel like you're in like the fall spirit, you know? So I think this is fantastic. I do also have this palette right over here, the Born This Way Sunset, which I also really like, but if I had to choose one, I think that I actually prefer this one just a little bit, but they're actually both really, really nice. So when I think of fall, I think of brown tones mainly, but I still love to incorporate some color, maybe not such bright shades all of the time, but here and there I'll still do that. But I do think of tones like this. This is the All Amethyst Colourpop eyeshadow palette. How gorgeous is this one? So the reason why I think it's perfect for fall especially is because it has like Colourpop purples here, but also has these really light, beautiful, like purpley tone shades, a nice mauve. And I feel like if you were really wanting to get into the fall mood, but you didn't want to wear like neutrals and browns, this I feel like really sets the tone for me. The formula is also very, very nice from Colourpop, so it makes it a million times easier to use. And I mean, even with these type of colors, you can always mix in like brown tones, but I feel like these colors are just so perfect. Like for September, October time, maybe even going to like November, December-ish time, because there's some like iciness to this too, but it's still slightly more on the subtle side. Like it's not that much in your face almost, you know? Does that make sense? Anyways, I am so excited to pull this out even more for the fall. It is beautiful. The next palette I have here is from Melt Cosmetics. Here is what it's called. I don't know how to pronounce it, but this is, I want to say their newer or their newest launch. For me, I am ultra thrilled to pull this out during the fall season, mainly because it includes pops of color, but also not in an overdone way, and I feel like it could fit really perfectly in with the season. So you do get like your deeper tones over here, so if I want to stick to that, I totally could, but I like the fact that there are some greens, some redder, warmer tone shades, which would be perfect again. This beautiful, like some beautiful greens over here, like this yellow. A lot of the time, I'll just stick to like an all green look, let's say, or like a more bronzy toned look, or more of like a rosy toned look. But with this palette, I feel like you really have the best of all of the worlds, because you could stick to any specific color story with this one, but a lot of the times, generally, I also really love to use, let's say, like deeper tones in the crease and then throw like a brighter shade on the lower lash line to kind of add a little bit more color to my makeup. And I just think it ties everything in so beautifully. I haven't heard much people talk about this one, but I feel like it's so versatile. I think this might even be the first one I'll use once I'm like starting to do more fall type of looks, but this is perfection. Probably one of the most beautiful palettes I own. If you were contemplating on it, I would say it's like the perfect epitome for fall. Next, I did not want to forget to speak about this little one by Natasha Denona. This is the Mini Love eyeshadow palette. So you guys can see here, I've given this little one a ton of love. I think, yeah, I do have pan on that one. Every single time I wear this one, let me tell you guys, the compliments are through the roof. Not only in my videos, but like when people see me in person, especially people who are not necessarily into makeup, they really like, they go out of their way to compliment me. And I'm like, wow, thank you so much. Because I know they typically like, everything almost looks the same to those who are not necessarily that into it, but this is like the most beautiful little one by Natasha Denona. As much as I love rustic tones and brown tones, I always love to incorporate such shades as well. This beautiful like deep eggplant purple is absolutely stunning in the outer part, like on the outer part of the eye. This shade is like a multi-dimensional glitter gorgeousness on the eye as well. Then we have this beautiful like deeper rosy shade. So you really could do a lot with this one. I don't exclusively use this. Well, I don't use a lot of these palettes exclusively for specific seasons, but a lot of times I will focus on other palettes more than others. But I will say for this one, it's more like a year-round palette for me. I use it for like if I go to weddings, to, you know, parties, wherever I may be. Like this is like usually like the tried and true palette that I use, because I feel like it incorporates just so much. So I'm definitely going to be using this much more during the fall, especially because it has like these deeper tones. And if I'm not wanting that like, you know, almost like typical, I would say, quote unquote, like brown toned look, this I feel like in a sense does scream fall to me. So I really think this is fantastic. If you're contemplating, this is my favorite Natasha Denona little one. I had to include another Natasha Denona palette. This is the Retro Eyeshadow Palette. This is actually very different compared to what I typically use and what I typically love from Natasha Denona. A lot of these tones are cool toned, rosy toned shades, and I don't feel like, and like mauves, I would say, and I don't feel like those shades necessarily look the best on me. I constantly mention that on my channel, but there's something about this palette that really gets me into that like very like cozy mood, you know? Besides for the fact that the formula is so easy to work with, you have a bunch of different colors to play around with here. You can stick to like a few of these lighter tones, but kind of deepen things up with like, let's say this berry tone shade. It really adds so much. I also like that you get a lighter pink shade over here. It really pairs well with all of the other shades. You also have a cool toned like silver shade. So if you really want to go that like ultra cool toned route, then you have that with this one. But I feel like the berry tones and the deep burgundy shades in here really scream fall to me. And it would actually also be a really perfect winter palette as well. So definitely one that I'm going to be using nonstop. It's one of my favorites. If you're looking for a cool tone palette that's not only silvers and grays, the retro one is really where it's at. All right, I do have another Natasha palette, because I'll tell you, these are the main palettes I typically use most of the time. This is a cool tone lover's dream. If you are specifically looking for silver tone and gray tones, this is perfection. Also with this one specifically, I cannot tell you how many compliments I get on my makeup when I wear this specific one and then the mini love palette. Those are the main two palettes that people are like absolutely in love with. Like pretty much all of the color combinations I come up with, I'm truly obsessed with. So in the fall, I like to wear warmer tone shades for the most part. But I also like to include and incorporate cool tone shades. For a long time, I thought it was just warm tone for me. But then when something like this released, I was like, you know what? I'm so into this kind of color story. So also with this, you get a lot of different kind of silvers in here. Your basic 3 matte brown shades, which are perfect to deepen up the crease with. You get lighter tone shades here, so you can kind of build it up a little bit. Also, you guys know Natasha Denona formula. This is one of her best palettes, I would say, ever. My favorite shade in here is this one. I also really like the brow, what is it called? The brow bone shade as well. But I mean, it says what you could use it for, but I really just use it for anything. And if you want to stick to a little bit more of like a warm / cool vibe, you can always use this shade because it does pull a little bit more warmer. And then maybe the like gold. So you kind of have a little bit of warmness here, but I would say overall it is a cool tone palette that I just feel like complements my skin tone and my eye color very much so. And I feel like it does that for a bunch of different people too. So definite must have for the fall for me. Next, I had to pull out a Pat McGrath eyeshadow palette. This right here is the Utopian Dream palette. Now, you're probably looking at this and thinking like, okay, this is more of like a summer vibed palette. And it probably is, but I love, like this came out I think last year, the end of August. I wore it so much throughout the fall and I feel like it was perfection. Mainly because you get your deeper tone shades there, but this shade right over here, I feel like really adds a little pop of something extra without overdoing it. So that's in regards to the mattes. With the metallics, the truth is if you do cover this one, and let's say the purple one, it looks definitely more fall. But I do like that you get those 2 shades in there if you wanted to spice things up a bit, but not overdo it. I think this is perfection. You get a lot of like multi-chromes in here, duochromes, really pretty metallic shades that are so fun to use. And usually with Pat McGrath palettes, like it always takes me out of my comfort zone. And I will say from all of her palettes that I own, I don't own all of them, but like with these bigger ones, this is my favorite one because I think it's so versatile. You get a lot of options in here. It never gets boring. It's never a dull moment. And I will also say with these like duochrome and metallic type of shades, you can also pile them on each other and it creates like the most beautiful, perfect shift on the eye. So if you were considering a Pat McGrath palette, but you didn't know which one you wanted to like maybe get into, I think this might be the perfect fall one. For me, I know that I'm gonna get a ton of use out of it and I really can't wait to see what other looks I can come up with. The final and 10th palette I have here is by Patrick Ta. This is the Major Dimension Rose 2 eyeshadow palette. So it's the second addition to his palettes. He has one that's more like neutral bronzy warm tones, and this one right here is more of like a bronzy / rosier tone palette. I cannot tell you guys how many times I've used this. So I think this is actually going to be the first full season that I have this in my life. I really can't say enough amazing things about this one. The metallic glitter shades in here are next level energy. The mattes here blend out like legit butter. I have a first impression on this. I don't necessarily use these cream shades as much as I would like, but going into the fall months, I would like to kind of get into those shades a bit more. Maybe use them as like a base to apply maybe these on top or these, or you can even use these as like for like brown liners. I feel like with the few palettes I chose, I really did not choose a ton that are ultra warm and brown in a way, except for maybe like the Rust palette. But this one right here is still significantly different than those. And I feel like because you get such awesome metallic shades here, it makes this palette a 10 out of 10 palette. And then with these matte shades, they are like bronzy tone mattes, but there's a hint of rosiness to them too, which makes it a little bit more interesting than, again, like a regular brown tone palette. And I just think it's amazing. I think it's like one of the best ones out there if you're looking for neutral glam, or you could just do neutral looks with this. This will be your babe. I'm obsessed. It's like, I love it. Okay, so here are my top 10 fall palettes that I absolutely love. I think I incorporated a decent amount of cooler tones and a few warmer tones as well as pops of colors. So I just feel like it just will keep things interesting, not the same, and fun. Plus, I feel like I would feel more creative with just using these more and more during the fall months. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Definitely let me know what your favorite fall palette is. I would love to know. And I will see you all in my next video.